Okay, listen. On Valentine's Day, Emma Brooks woke up with the worst head cold she'd ever had. I mean, she was 15 years old and she'd had head colds before, but like this one was a whopper. I mean, we're talking congested sinuses and runny nose and gunky eyes and blocked ears and her brain like it felt like someone had taken it out and stomped on it a few times. And she couldn't believe it. See, for Emma, like this was the worst tragedy ever. And we're talking worse than being blown up by suicide bombers on a school excursion to the nuclear reactor. Because that night, she'd been invited to Eric Miller's Valentine's Day party. And she had the most gigantic crush on Eric Miller that a person could have. But the way that she looked now, she was like some snot-filled, hideous freak, he'd run away screaming. And now, due to a head cold, her entire life, it'd be ruined. And she'd end up like one of those women who never smile, and they've got to pretend that their work is more important than anything else. Eric Miller, Eric Miller, Eric Miller, Eric Miller, Eric Miller. So she ran to her mother, and her mother said she had to go straight back to bed, and there was no way she could go to a party with a head cold like that. Total meltdown, total meltdown, total meltdown. And her mother didn't even understand how important it was to go to Eric Miller's Valentine's Day party. And Emma had this total meltdown, because at that moment she knew she must have been adopted, because her real mother would have understood immediately. But Emma Brooks needed a solution, and one that didn't entail bed rest for a week. And so she ran out of the front door searching for it. And she ran and she ran. As she was running wildly and with no plan, she came across a pharmacy. And she went inside, this pharmacy here, and she explained everything to the pharmacist. How she had the worst head cold in the world, and how she had to go to Eric Miller's Valentine's Day party so Eric Miller would fall in love with her, and how on top of that it had clicked that she was adopted, and now she had to find her real mother, who would definitely know answers to some very confusing questions about Valentine's Day and Eric Miller and what to do. Plus, on top of that, there seemed to be all this whispering going on, and it was very disorientating. And the pharmacist told her she should go home and lie down because, well, she seemed feverish, and she even seemed hysterical, and she was babbling, and she was even giving the pharmacist a headache. But Emma said there was no way she was going home, because the future of her whole life depended on Eric Miller's Valentine's Day party, and couldn't he understand that? The pharmacist, he gave her the strongest head cold tablets he had. It had stuff like belladonna and pseudoephedrine and codeine phosphate and eye of newt and toe of frog and who knows what else was in it. And the pharmacist, he told her that they were super strong and to only take 1 3 times a day and no more. And that once she took them, things would work out for her. So Emma Brooks, she bought the head cold tablets, and she thought if 1 is good, well then 3 must be better. So she took 3 of the tablets, because she reckoned she really had to get better quick, because she had to work out what to do now she knew she was adopted, and whether she should tell the news to Eric Miller at his party, and if that would make him fall in love with her, or if that might turn him off her. It was all very confusing. And she bought a cheese sandwich from this shop here, because she began to feel very hungry. And she was on her way to the hospital through this park, because she was going to the hospital because they told her that's where she was born, and she wanted to look up the records of her birth to prove that she really wasn't born there, because obviously if she was adopted, she probably came from somewhere, some hemi-demi semi-Dickensian orphanage somewhere, so where her real loving and understanding and young and poor mother had probably left her on some church doorstep. And then suddenly she felt really tired. So she saw this park bench, yeah, this one here, and she sat down on it, and she got drowsier, and she got drowsier, and she felt herself falling asleep. But then suddenly she was awake again, but she was traveling in a train, or at least it seemed like a train, but like parallel university. And sitting next to her was this fox, or maybe it was a man. She was all mixed up because sometimes the man was a fox and other times he was a man. And so she thought she was dreaming, and so she pinched herself. And it hurt, so she couldn't be dreaming. So maybe she only dreamed that it hurt. It was really hard to tell. So she asked the fox if he was a man, and the fox said, all men are foxes when they want something. And she said, stop being so cryptic. And she told him she wanted something. She wanted to find out who her real mother was, and she wanted to find her real mother, because her real mother would be able to explain things about Valentine's Day and Eric Miller. And the fox said he'd tell her where to look, but he was starving, and he asked if she had something for him to eat first. And she had this half-eaten cheese sandwich in her pocket, so she gave it to him. And he took it, and he began to leave. But she stopped him and said, where are you going? You haven't told me where to start looking for my real mother. And the fox told her he was a fox, and it was in his nature to trick girls into giving him things. And Emma told him that was wrong. And the fox said, look into the silence. And then he disappeared. And like in a dream. Except she thought, but she was in a dream, and then she thought, can you tell you're in a dream when you're in a dream? And then she got confused as to whether she was dreaming, she was in a dream, or really having a dream, or not. It was perplexing. And then the train stopped at some train station, and there was this sign. No, it didn't say that. It said this. And so she got off, and she found herself on a street. And there was a church, and so she went into the church because maybe she could ask someone there, someone who could be trusted possibly, about where to look for her real mother. And she went into the church and it was empty. And she called out, but there was no reply, and she thought, great. She was just about to leave and maybe go over to her friend Jade's place where they could watch video hits on TV at least. When all of a sudden she saw this light, this one here, and the light spoke, and it said, wait. And Emma asked, are you God? And the voice said, I am that is. And Emma said, well, that's all very hocus pocus and metaphysical, but it doesn't really answer my question. And the voice said, speak your real question. And Emma said, how do you know I've got a real question? And the voice said, experience tells me everyone has a question. And Emma started to tell the light about Eric Miller and the Valentine's Day party and waking up with a head cold and how she'd worked out she was adopted. And the light said, edit please, I don't have all day. And so Emma asked the voice, where could she find her real mother? And the voice told Emma she'd come to the right place. And the Virgin Mary was her mother. And there was this sort of orchestral sound like this and these flashing images. And Emma said, hang on. The Virgin Mary's not my mother. And the light said, the Virgin Mary's everyone's mother. And Emma said, maybe in some metaphorical way, but really it was time for this particular light to get some reality check. And the light said, how about, if you're looking for a mother, the goddess Ishtar? And Emma said, that was just too pagan in some Babylonian fertility goddess way. It just wasn't correct for her. And then the light said, how about the matriarch Sarah from Genesis? And Emma said, that is just too Old Testament for me. And the light said, stop being so argumentative. And Emma said she couldn't help it. And that's why she was always head of the debating team at school. She was an argumentative type and she was good at it. And the light said, please leave or you'll be cursed. And Emma said, what kind of a light curses a person? And the light said, one that you've annoyed. And Emma said, but where do I find my real mother? And the light said, next door. And then, just like someone switches off a light, the light was gone. Emma, she thought to herself, what have I got to lose? After all, I've already gone completely crazy since I'm now conversing with foxes and with lights, and I might as well listen to a talking light. And she left the church and she went up the street to the building next building, and she went in this building here. But the place, it was dimly lit, and there were lots of pink soft furnishings and feathers and velvet, and it was full of fluffy stuff like this. And she was looking and wondering where her real mother could be when she saw a cat lounging on a divan, and she asked it if it had seen her mother, and the cat said, maybe. So Emma, she told the cat she'd already had a bad experience with a tricky fox, so a trust of furry animals that wasn't particularly good, and the cat told her to relax. And the cat, it even offered its pet mouse for Emma to play with, but Emma wasn't in the mood to play cat and mouse. So the cat explained that all women come through this place. And Emma asked, what was this place? And the cat said it was a special place. And Emma said, like a beauty salon? And the cat said to think a little deeper. But Emma couldn't think any deeper, so the cat told her that this place, it was a womb. And Emma said, well, what's that got to do with my real mother? And the cat said, you come from the womb, and in you was a womb. And Emma said, yeah, she knew all this from biology classes at school. And the cat said, there's one thing she didn't realize about her real mother. And Emma asked, what was it? And the cat said, meow. And Emma said, now's not the time to revert to cat talk, but the cat only meowed more and more until... Well, Emma gave it a bowl of milk from the milk in this fridge here that was in the corner. And suddenly there were lots of cats and they were meowing louder and louder, but she couldn't give them all milk, and all that meowing was driving her nuts.
Looking to the silence, 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 looking to the silence.
So she ran away, and she ran and she ran. She ran so she could hear herself think and work out how to find her mother, her real mother. And she ran until she saw this. No, not that. No, she didn't see that. She saw this. And she read the sign, and it said Lake of Truth. And she didn't know what to do. And a little bird, it flew towards her, and it told her to go jump in the lake. And she said to the bird that sounded like an insult. And the bird told her to stop being overly sensitive. And Emma said, why don't you go jump in the lake to the bird? That's what she said to the bird. And the bird said it didn't have to because it already knew the truth.
Looking to the silence, looking to the silence, looking to the silence, looking to the silence.
And Emma said, but she was scared to go jump in the lake. And the bird said, you're scared of the truth. And Emma said she wasn't scared to know the truth about who her real mother was. And the bird said, no, not that. And the bird said it was talking about the truth in general, like the truth with a capital T, like that truth. And Emma said, why didn't the bird just tell her the truth? And the bird said that the trouble with Emma was that she had too many words, and that the truth, it wasn't in words. And then the bird, it flew away because, well, that's what birds do. They fly away.
Looking to the silence, looking to the silence, looking to the silence, looking to the
So Emma, she jumped into the lake, and at first she struggled until she was going to burst from needing to breathe. She thought she was going to drown, but then she found she could breathe, and she didn't drown. And slowly she found quiet.
looking to the silence, 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 looking to the silence.
And in the silence, Emma, she thought, and then she knew what to do. And she asked a passing fish the way to the future. But the fish, he told her. He said that the future wasn't a place that you go to. It came to you. And she saw this sign and she followed it. Yeah, that sign there. And she followed that path, the path that the sign was pointing to, until she arrived at this cemetery. And there she saw these guys and this guy and him as well. But she wasn't freaked out. And she came to this grave because somehow she knew where to go. She knew to go to there. I don't know how, but she knew. And she stared at the tombstone. And the tombstone, it had her name on it. And on the tombstone, she saw like a negative of her, or maybe it was the positive and she was the negative. Negative, positive, who knows? Anyway, it's hard to tell. And the negative of her said, I'm you in 100 years. And Emma said, in 100 years, like I won't be here. And the negative of Emma said, yeah, so while you're here, be still, listen, and appreciate what you've got. And strangely, Emma, she was both happy and she was sad at the same time, because Emma Brooks knew then and there that she was no longer a child. And while she was contemplating being an adult, this witch appeared, this one here. And the witch said, "I am your mother, you found me." And she cackled like spookily, like this. Something like that anyway, that's how she was cackling. But instead of being scared, which would have given the witch power, Emma said, "No, you're not my mother. I know where my real mother is. And besides, who'd want a witch for a mother?" And the witch, well, she just disappeared. And Emma Brooks, she went back home and she hugged her mother. And she said she was glad that her mother was her real mother and that she wasn't adopted. And her real mother just didn't know what she was talking about. But that night, Emma didn't go to Eric Miller's Valentine's Day party. She went straight to bed, obviously, the whole day. And she remained in bed for a whole week until she got better. And afterwards, Emma Brooks, she was different. She was often quiet and still. And she had this little smile like she knew something you didn't know. And people everywhere, they could tell there was something about her. Even Eric Miller, who fell in love with Emma Brooks.